Welcome back to another Fuel Up Classic video, and if you haven't subscribed already, please do. It makes all the difference, and we regularly feature a variety of different classic cars on the channel. So if you love classics, this is the channel for you. Now today's video is all about the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. I'm lucky enough that we're going to get behind the wheel of this car, we're going to take it out for a drive, and we're going to talk you through what I think is probably one of the cheapest supercar bargains out there at the moment. But we've got to answer the big question is, does it still feel special? Because it's hard to believe that the V8 Vantage came out all the way back in 2005. This very car, I think, represents a great sweet spot in the range. 2008 car, it's got the later 4.7 litre V8 engine. It's a great drive. I think they look fantastic. So join me as we take it out for a drive and we talk through all the details of a V8 Vantage and why you might consider buying one yourself. But I tell you, the one thing that will sell this car to you if you've never driven one before, apart from its absolutely gorgeous looks, I think the proportions are amazing. It's one of the most beautiful Aston Martins since the original DB5, I think. But it's the engine. And I don't need to talk over this bit. Let's just give it a little squeeze of the pedal. It's just one of the most fantastic noises of any modern car. It's raw, it's throaty, it revs really well, and it pulls really well. So as far as I'm concerned, any day spent behind the wheel of an Aston Martin is a great day. And you may have noticed that these cars now can be picked up for the earliest 4.3 V8 Vantages somewhere around £25,000, and that's a figure that they've stuck out for quite a few years now. Now this particular car is a later 2008 car where they increased power up to 420 brake horsepower. The engine was enlarged to 4.7 litres. There's a bit more torque as well over the original. And for me, I think it's the sweet spot in the range. Something like this that's covered 35,000 miles, has been really well looked after, is in great condition, can be picked up for about £35,000, which, although I admit that's a big chunk of money, it's not a big chunk of money for what this car offers. In the grand scheme of things, it's a bit of a bargain. It's an Aston Martin and running costs don't come cheap. I can't sugarcoat that in any way, but everyone I speak to and everyone that's had these cars for a long, long time, there isn't really anything massively major to look out for on them. They're really quite reliable cars. Little frustrations can crop up from time to time, but nothing too alarming. So that's a really good tick as well in terms of if this is your first sort of venture into supercar territory, I suppose we could call it, that it isn't going to bite you at every possible opportunity. And if you can just swallow the associated running costs, it won't actually be that bad. But what you really need to know is, if you've seen them online for sale and you thought, wow, that's a beautiful car and I'd love to own one and perhaps I can afford one, you're going to need to know what it's like to drive and what it's going to like to really live with one of these cars. And the first thing you should be aware of is the V8 Vantage is much sportier than its siblings. The DB9, I find, is a softer car. That V12 is an absolute masterpiece, but everything about the Vantage just feels a little bit more focused. You step into it and it's apparent up to about 30 to 40 miles an hour, the ride is firm. This is a firm riding car. You sit low, visibility is fairly poor actually, but you're in this cabin, everything feels close to you. It's a really lovely place to be, and we'll get onto the question of whether the car feels special a little bit later on. But really, all you need to know, whether you love the looks, whether you can afford the price, whether this car is flawed or not, I guarantee you, take one out for a drive, stick it in third gear, squeeze the accelerator, and you're going to fall in love with this car, because for me, I find it's got the perfect amount of power, 420 brake horsepower going through the rear wheels. I don't need any more. This is more than quick enough. And that noise, the noise just fills the cabin. Even more so if you go for the convertible option, then you've just got that glorious exhaust note just behind your ears. But in the conventional coupe as well, it's enough to make you feel like you made the right choice of car. And crucially, it's got that 6-speed manual gearbox. From a personal point of view, I think the automatic gearbox option on these really blunts what is a fantastic driver's car. I find it a little bit slow, it's a bit dim-witted whenever I've experienced one. This 6-speed manual is short, sharp and precise, and that's exactly what I want in an Aston Martin. And it also gives me the ability to control the car. I feel more connected to it when I drive it. When I do look around the cabin in here, I'm noticing straight away the switch gear, the windscreen wiper stalk and the indicator stalk are lifted straight from a Ford Focus. The spare key, and I'm just using the spare key today, the actual main key is quite special. The spare key is probably one of the most disappointing, cheapest looking keys I've really ever seen. It's not worthy of an Aston Martin, but there's such minor criticisms, and I'm really nitpicking here because, again, drop that beautiful 6-speed gearbox down, squeeze the throttle, and just enjoy this car. You're gonna love every minute of driving it, and it is a driver's car. The handling is really sharp. As I say, the ride is firm, but once you get it up to sort of motorway speeds on a good surface, it's not uncomfortable. It's certainly not as jarring as some of the other sort of supercars that you can drive. You could live with this car on a daily basis very easily. And the brakes, well, you've got big old vented discs front and back, slightly bigger on the front. They will pull this car up to a pretty sharp and secure stop very abruptly. So you never felt like you're lacking confidence to push on with this car. It can be a little bit of a handful on a wet and damp road, but you never feel like it's overpowered. A lot of people complain that these cars aren't as exciting as they expected, but I really don't think that's the case. I think this car has got a really great blend of power, a really beautiful styling, and usability as well. So for £35,000, I'd love to hear in the comments below what else you think you could pick up for, or what perhaps might be better than the option of a V8 Vantage. And I think there's one other thing to sort of bring into this video is, yes, you can pick one of these cars up from £25,000, which really doesn't buy you a lot these days, especially on the used car market, let alone an Aston Martin, is whether it feels special. And it does. For me, it does. I mean, your own opinion will differ depending on what you look for in a car, but for me, and it's not a rose-tinted review in the sense that, well, it's an Aston Martin, so it must be amazing, because there are flaws, but there is always a certain amount of cachet of having an Aston Martin in the garage. It is honestly a very, very engaging driving experience, and there's always that glorious exhaust note just waiting to be unearthed, which I love. It's so addictive that you could just blip the throttle and away you go, and you've got a big grin on your face.